it be? Thank you. I am genuinely humbled to have this award. I was thinking earlier that being humbled isn't a normal feeling, is it? I don't often feel humbled, disparaged, humiliated, you know, put down. But humbled is a rather old feeling, isn't it? It's not a modern emotion. But I do feel it, and particularly to have this award in the name of Benjamin Franklin, who was the most remarkable man. He lived nearby in Craven Street. The house is a few minutes away, and I really recommend that you go and take a look at it. It's just been opened, just been renovated. It's a very powerful evocation of the life of this extraordinary figure. A man who was deeply involved in the growth of industrialism, at the heart of the Enlightenment, at the heart of the creation of the New World, and with a passion for education. A man who was also deeply invested in science, in the arts, in the humanities, and in politics. A polymath, I think, a Renaissance figure in the heart of the Enlightenment. And one of the first significant members of the Royal Society of Arts. If you don't know this institution, I really encourage you to find out more about it. It was founded, I think I'm correct in saying, in 1753 by William Shipley. And its full name is the Royal Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufactures and Commerce. And it's had a long history in the promotion and advocacy of appropriate forms of public education. I have had a long association myself with the RSA. I gave a lecture here, even Matthew may not know this, in July of 1990, in this very room. And I propose to repeat it word for word, if that's all right. I don't see why I should waste time thinking of anything fresh for you, frankly. No, no, in 1990, I had been running a National Arts in Schools project, and I had published a book on the arts in schools. I have a great passion for the arts, and we were meeting here shortly after the introduction of the national curriculum in England, which profoundly misunderstood the place of the arts in education. So I was talking about how the arts could be made part of the mainstream of education. And here we are, 17 years later, when it's all so different, I feel. So I want to say a few words about that, and I want to show you a couple of short movie clips, and then to have a conversation with you. One of the things that's happened to me since 1990 is that I've moved to live in America. And I moved there 7 years ago at the invitation of the Getty Center. I didn't flee Great Britain, but put yourself in my place. I had a phone call on the 3rd of January, 1990, when I was living near Coventry. And this guy said, "Would you like to come and live in California?" We left immediately. I didn't ask what the job was, we just went. And the phone is still swinging on the hook, actually, in the house. And we hope one day the children will track us down, but we don't care. But I now live in America, and I love it. Who's been to Los Angeles here, anyone? It's an extraordinary place. We were in Las Vegas recently, my wife and I. We've been together for 30 years, and we decided last year to get married again. So we went to the Elvis Chapel. Now, I recommend it. You should do it. We had the Blue Hawaii package. But there are others. But with the Blue Hawaii package, you get the Elvis impersonator, 4 songs, the chapel, of course, a puff of smoke as you go in. You have to request that. And a hula girl. That was optional. But I opted for it. And for reasons I was rather pleased about, frankly. For another $100, we could have had a pink Cadillac. But we thought that was a bit tacky. You know, frankly, we thought that was lowering the tone of the whole occasion, frankly. But I mention it because Las Vegas is an iconic example of the thing I would like us to talk about. Not Las Vegas in itself, but the idea that gave rise to it. If you think of it, every other city on Earth has a reason to be where it is. Like London, you know, it's in a natural basin, so it's good for trade, or it's in a harbour, or it's in a valley, so it's good for agriculture. You know, or it's on a hillside, so it's good for defence. None of this is true of Las Vegas. There is no physical reason for it to be there. The only reason it's there is the thing that gave rise to this organisation, that affects every aspect of your life, which makes humanity what it is. The only thing, in my opinion, which is the extraordinary power which is bestowed on human beings that no other species has, so far as we can judge. I mean the power of imagination. We take it totally for granted. This capacity to bring into mind things that aren't present, and on that basis to hypothesize about things that have never been, but could be. Every feature of human culture, in my view, is the consequence of this unique capacity. Now, other creatures may have something like it. Other creatures sing, but they don't write operas. You know, other creatures are agile, but they don't form Olympic committees. They communicate, but they don't have festivals of theatre. They have structures, but they don't build buildings and furnish them. We are unique in this capacity, a capacity that's produced the most extraordinary diversity of human culture, of enterprise, of innovation, 6,000 languages currently spoken on Earth, and the great adventure which produced, among other things, the Royal Society of Arts and all of its works. But I believe that we systematically destroy this capacity in our children and in ourselves. Now, I pick my words carefully. I don't say deliberately. I don't think it's deliberate. But it happens to be systematic. We do it routinely, unthinkingly, and that's the worst of it. Because we take for granted certain ideas about education, about children, about what it is to be educated, about social need and social utility, about economic purpose. We take these ideas for granted, and they turn out not to be true. Many ideas which seem obvious turn out not to be true. That was really the great adventure of the Enlightenment. Ideas that seemed obvious that turned out not to be true. Ironically, though, I believe the legacy of the Enlightenment is now hampering the reforms that are needed in education. We have grown up in a system of public education which is dominated by two ideas. One of them is a conception of economic utility. And you can illustrate that directly. It's implicit in the structure of the school curriculum. It's simply present. There is in every school system on Earth a hierarchy of subjects. You know it, you went through it. If you're in education, you probably subscribe to it or you contribute to it somehow. When we moved to America, we put our kids into high school. And it was recognizable. The curriculum was totally recognizable. Math, science, and English language at the top. Then the humanities, the arts way down the bottom. And in the arts, there's always another hierarchy. Art and music are always thought to be more important than drama and dance. There isn't a school in the country that I know, sorry, a school system, let me be clear. There isn't a school system actually anywhere that teaches dance every day, systematically, to every child in the way that we require them to learn mathematics. Now, I'm not against mathematics, on the contrary. But why is dance such a loser in the system? Well, I think one of the reasons is people never saw any economic point in it. So there's an economic judgment that's made in the structure of the school curriculum. And I'm sure it was true of you. You probably found yourself benignly steered away from things you were good at school towards things that other people advised you would be more useful to you. So effectively, our school curricula are based on the premise that there are two sorts of subject: useful ones and useless ones. And the useless ones fall away eventually. And they fall away especially when money starts to become tight, as it always is. George Bush was in town today, wasn't he? I just thought I'd share the pain. That was all. I'm feeling it. No, President Bush, as I call him, was responsible, with others, for a cross-party piece of legislation in America to reform public education. And I have lots of conversations about it now I live in America, which I shall keep saying, by the way, to make you feel bad, okay? I live in California. And you don't. So there you go then. No, when I got to America, I was told that the Americans don't get irony. This is not true. This is a British conceit. But I feel okay about it because there are other ones. When we went to America, we were given a guidebook of how to behave in America. Honestly, by our removals agent. How to behave in America. I'm handing it out to all the Americans I meet now. Look, you do it, you do it. You know, let's all behave properly, shall we? But one of the things it said in it was, don't hug people in America. They don't like it. Honestly, it's explicit. Don't hug them. They don't like it. This turns out to be nonsense. They love it. People in my experience love getting hugged in America. But we thought they didn't. So for the first year, we had kept our arms at our side at social gatherings, for fear of giving offence. And this all added to the idea that we typified British Reserve. You know, or that we're some refugees from Riverdance. You know, but I was told the Americans don't get irony. And then I came across this piece of legislation in America called No Child Left Behind. And I thought whoever came up with that title gets irony, because this legislation is leaving millions of children behind. Of course, that's not a very attractive name for legislation, millions of children left behind, I can say that. But give or take a twiddle, it's the 1988 Education Act in this country. It was the manifesto, pretty much, that inspired the work of Chris Woodhead, I believe, during his time at Ofsted. Now, I think this is important, because what it represents to me is the ideology of education writ large, and that's the problem. So when we talk about changing paradigms, my firm conviction is that we have to do much, much more than is currently happening. Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. I don't know of an exception. Mind you, what's new? We've always been reforming public education, but we're doing it now consistently and systematically all over the place. There are two reasons for it. The first of them is economic. People are trying to work out, how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? How do we do that, given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating? How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on earth is trying to figure out, how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization. How do we square that circle? Most countries, I believe, are doing what we were doing in 1988, operating on the premise that the challenge is to reform education to make it a better version of what it was. In other words, the challenge is just to do better what we did before, but improve. And we have to raise standards. And people say we have to raise standards if this is a breakthrough. Like, really, yes, we should. Why would you lower them? I mean, I haven't come across an argument that persuades me of lowering them. But raising them, of course we should raise them. The problem is that the current system of education, in my view and experience, was designed and conceived and structured for a different age. It was conceived in the intellectual culture of the Enlightenment and in the economic circumstances of the Industrial Revolution. Before the middle of the 19th century, there were no systems of public education. Not really. I mean, you could get educated by Jesuits, if you had the money. But public education, paid for from taxation, compulsory to everybody and free at the point of delivery, that was a revolutionary idea. And many people objected to it. They said it's not possible